you want to start a sustainable fashion brand that makes at minimum $20,000 in just 6 months, well, the first step is to be so intentional and strategic with your time. I likely don't have to tell you this, but there's so much that goes into building a new business off the ground, especially a sustainable fashion brand. And so you're going to be wearing a lot of different hats, especially if you're a one-woman show or a one-man show. And because of that, there's actually 5 different departments you're going to be in charge of at the beginning. First of all, you're going to be all about your marketing, and that's so important because when you launch, I don't want there to be crickets. So you need to be so intentional about your target customer, who you're trying to help, who you're trying to serve. Of course, you also want to build up the platform and the community so that when you do launch, you have an audience you're launching to. Secondly, you're also going to be all over your products. So you're going to decide which 1 to 2 products you're going to be producing, and I can talk a little bit more about that later as well. And then you're going to be in charge of your production as well. So the design, the sourcing of materials, the sourcing of ethical manufacturers. And if this is your first run, you're not going to DIY it. You're going to hire someone to help you do it. And then, of course, you're also going to be in charge of your finances and your accounting because we are not going to stick our head in the sand. We're going to be so intentional and know our numbers. So that's really important. Last but not least, you're going to be all over your business setup. So that means hiring lawyers, accountants, all that jazz, so that everything is kosher and set up to go. So there's 5 different departments. You're going to be managing a lot of different things. So that's why it's so important for you to be so intentional and conscious of how you're spending your time. So there's a lot on the go and a lot of things will happen simultaneously. So to ensure you're not too overwhelmed and nothing falls through the cracks, I recommend a project management tool such as ClickUp, and that's what we use at Recloseted to stay organized. There's a link for you in the description box for you to try for free, and it's really important to use some sort of project management system so that everything is recorded. You don't have to keep things in your head because that's when you get stressed out and overwhelmed. Put it down onto paper, assign due dates, and know exactly when you're doing things. So with that being said, know that you're going to be so strategic and intentional with your time, and make sure you plan out everything in advance so that nothing falls through the cracks and you are organized. Once you set up your project management system and you know that you're going to be so intentional with your time, the next step is to identify and focus on your ideal customer. This is crucial because we want to make sure that you really resonate with that ideal customer so that you can make 20K in 6 months. Because if you try to relate to the masses, you're going to relate to no one. And we want to take a customer first approach with your brand. We don't want to just fall in love with our designs and with our products because that's when your launch will flop. I've seen so many brands go down this route of falling in love with a sweater they designed or falling in love with a blazer they designed, and they've never really validated the product with their ideal customer. So when it launches and they haven't built a community, it flops and no one buys anything. And I don't want you to be in that situation. So you need to focus and identify your ideal customer. And it's so crucial to niche down and narrow down so that you relate to your ideal customer. Because when you try to relate to everyone, you're going to relate to no one. So don't have the fear of missing out and don't feel like you're leaving money on the table, because especially as a new brand with limited resources, time, and budget, if you want your marketing to go further, you need to make sure that it is so tailored and so specific to your ideal customer. So take a second to think about who that might be. Who do you really want to serve and support with your brand? And make sure you're passionate about it, because when you're passionate about it, you will genuinely go out of your way to understand them, understand their pain points and their problems. And a tool that you can use to do that, to really know your customer inside and out, are market research surveys and interviews. And we always actually recommend our clients to do both and combine them so that you can create a persona document. And this is great because it's just a summary and a snapshot view of who your ideal customer is. So when you go out and make products, when you think about marketing campaigns, you just have to reference that one document and you know exactly who your customer is. So make sure you take the next step, which is to identify your ideal customer and get so specific with it. As an example, if you want to start a sustainable wedding dress company or a sustainable bridal brand, then your target customer are brides-to-be. And so your target are women or people that identify as women that have recently gotten engaged. And so you really want to understand their pain points. Are there certain designs that aren't out there? Is there an experience you can make better because planning weddings is really, really stressful? What does that look like? And be really, really passionate about who you choose to be your ideal customer or your target customer, and then really identify what the pain points are, where you can add value, and how you can really serve them so that your brand stands out and really resonates with them. That is so key, especially as a new brand with limited resources, budget, and time. You just really want to make sure that you really identify with your ideal customer. I cannot say that enough, so that you can stand out and be successful. Once you've set up your project management system, you've identified and gotten to know your ideal customer, the next step is to develop 1 to 2 products. Like I mentioned, we always recommend to clients for their first collection to only produce 1, max 2 products. And I know that sometimes when I say that, people get upset because creatively, maybe they have an idea for a 10-piece collection and they want to have all these different products. But I'm simply saying just to hold off on that right now. You can always launch with more collections in the future, but you really want to make sure your first collection knocks it out of the park. You really nail these 1 to 2 products and they're the highest quality possible. So then that way you build brand trust, brand credibility, and loyalty with your ideal customer so that word of mouth starts to happen, they become repeat customers, and then for your next collection, you can make it a little bit bigger. But I have seen a lot of brands start with a 5, 10, 15-piece collection, and it's really, really stressful. They're strapped for cash, and across the board, the quality just isn't great because if you think about it, your time and attention is now being divided across 15 different pieces versus just 1 to 2. And so I really want you to perfect 1 to 2 products. And again, I'm not telling you can never do that. I'm just saying simply hold off for now. And that's just been the strategy that's works best for our clients. So I wanted to share that with you. And the key with trying to pick which 1 to 2 products you want to develop goes all the way back to your ideal customer. Really identify what problem you're solving and then co-create a solution with them. And so in our previous example of a sustainable bridal brand, if the problem is that brides-to-be don't have a lot of budget and they also need a versatile but beautiful wedding dress, then perhaps you work with the bride to develop something that she can wear at the ceremony but also at the reception as well. And maybe it's the same dress, but it's different removable sleeves, or you can make the train longer or shorter. There's different things you can do, but really work with your ideal customer to figure out what solution you can offer them and then go and make it. It's so important to take that customer first approach. And remember, we're only going to make 1 to 2 products because I want you to be so wildly successful. I do not want your first launch to be the only collection you ever release because I don't want you to fizzle out. I want you to knock it out of the park, have all the success you deserve, and then have the capital to go out and do your second collection. So make sure you take this next step, which is to produce only 1 to 2 products, and be so intentional with the products you decide to do, and work with your ideal customer to figure out what that looks like. If you're getting a lot out of this video, you're gonna love my free 60-minute launch masterclass. I am sharing 3 secret strategies, the first one being our proven process to design high-quality garments even if you don't have a fashion background. Next, we're going to be sharing our tried and true system to source sustainable materials and ethical manufacturers, even if you don't have industry connections. And last but not least, our tried and true system to build an engaged community that's ready to buy from you when you launch. This is going to be jam-packed. I'm going to be sharing secrets I've never shared before, so make sure you sign up. We have limited spots, and you can do so at recloseted.com/masterclass. The link will also be in the description for you as well. Now, let's dive back into the video. Once you've narrowed down the 1 to 2 products that you're going to be making, the next step is to start building your audience. This is so important because a lot of the times I find that founders will wait until the 1 to 2 products are finalized and it's ready to go before they start posting on Instagram or before they start building their social media following. And that's such a big mistake because it takes so much time to build up an audience that's big enough for you to have a 20K plus launch. So you need to start right away. And when I say that, people understand, but then they go, okay, Selena, but what do I start posting? Because I literally have no product. So what kind of content am I going to be doing? And I'm going to do more videos on that in the future to help you out. But for now, just understand that you should be sharing the behind the scenes of your brand. So make sure you involve your community on your journey because that's when they're invested in your success and they will genuinely want to see you succeed. So what you can do is as you're sourcing materials, as you're meeting designers, as you're starting to even narrow down your products, you can do posts about it, you can do stories about it, and just really share and be transparent around this entire process, because that way people will become emotionally invested in your brand and they will want to support you and cheer you on. And I often find too, that's when word of mouth really happens and they share with their friends and family. And of course, when you finally launch too, they'll want to support you. So make sure you take that next step, which is now to start building your audience. And we also want to make sure we are focusing on the 1 to 2 platforms that your ideal customer is on. So in the example of the sustainable bridal brand, we likely want to be on Pinterest or maybe Instagram, depending on where our ideal customer is. And so if they're not on TikTok or if they're not on another platform, don't waste your time, your resources, and your energy being on that platform, because we want to make sure your ideal customer is actually seeing this content and you can actually resonate with them. There's no point building a following and building a community if it's not your ideal customer and they're not going to be the ones buying from you. So remember that and start building your audience ASAP. As you start to build your audience and share the behind the scenes of your business, the next step is to outsource to professionals to develop your products. Especially if you don't have a fashion background, I don't want you to be DIYing this. So you're going to be hiring designers to bring your products to life. And if you need help with this, watch my previous video on how to design a clothing line the right way, even if you don't have a fashion background. And then of course, you're going to be sourcing materials and manufacturers and getting them to be helping you with making your clothes. You're not going to be sewing it yourself at home in your basement. Like, that's just not going to work. So if you need help sourcing materials and manufacturers and finding great partners to work with, make sure you sign up for my masterclass. The link is, again, recloseted.com/masterclass. And again, just make sure you outsource and you trust people and you find the best people to work with. That is so key. And so watch my previous video on how to figure out how to find the best designer. And then of course, come to my masterclass as well. So you know who you're targeting with your brand. You have an idea of the 1 to 2 products you're going to be producing. You have started to build your community and share the behind the scenes. And then of course you are outsourcing for the development of your product. And the next step is now to do a pre-sales model. I always tell our clients to leverage a pre-sales model because there is no way you could launch successfully in just 6 months with inventory on hand, because that's just a lot. And unless you're doing like a merch business or a drop ship type situation, and those are not the most sustainable things in the world. And so if you want to genuinely build a conscious and sustainable fashion brand from the ground up, and you want to be designing intentional products that aren't out there, then we always recommend to our clients to do a pre-sales model. What that means is essentially your customers will prepay you for your garments. And so if you're thinking about designing a really, really cool wedding dress that has never been done before, they're going to be prepaying you upfront for that dress so that they can reserve their spot in their inventory. And then you're going to use that money to then go and produce the dress. And so that gives you a little bit more time, but the bonus too is that you get more capital upfront for production and you don't have to put in a lot of your own money. And so that's really, really helpful for brands just starting out. And the other thing as well is you get to know how much inventory you want, because especially if this is your first collection, you might not have a lot of good data around how much you're going to get in sales. And so in order to truly know how much you should go and produce and ensure there isn't waste, a pre-sales model is great for that. And we don't recommend leveraging a crowdfunding site like a Kickstarter or Indiegogo for 2 reasons. First of all, sites like that take typically 5% off the top, and when your costs are already higher as a sustainable fashion brand, that's a lot to ask for. And then secondly, it doesn't build your brand, because if you think about it, when someone buys something off of those sites, they just say, oh yeah, I got a dress off of Kickstarter, or I bought a sweater off of Indiegogo, but they never really talk about your brand. So that doesn't build your brand. And so because of those reasons, we recommend to our clients to do pre-sales off of their website. And that's a good segue into my next step, which is to build up your Shopify site. So in the background, start to build your site on Shopify. And we recommend Shopify because it's just the best option for e-com brands, especially as you're first starting out, because you can DIY it. You don't need a custom website. You don't need to spend like hundreds and thousands of dollars on a website, unless you have that money lying around, in which case, go for it. But if you just want to spend like $300 to $500, get a really good theme, in most cases, you can't even tell it's a theme. So definitely recommend that and just get it going. And then you can just run it off of your own website. So leverage that pre-sales model, build up your Shopify site, and make sure throughout this entire process, you're documenting it as well, right? Like, you want to make sure you share the behind the scenes so that when you launch, you have a community they're ready to buy from you. And like I mentioned at the very, very beginning of the video, there's a lot happening all at the same time, and I recognize that. So that's why you really need to manage everything and a project management tool. So there's a lot happening, and over the next 6 months, you're gonna be working on all those things behind the scenes, and then when it's time to launch, I really want you to launch over 2 weeks. That is the next step. Launch over 2 weeks, because a big rookie mistake I see is that brands will go out with a bang and maybe they'll do a couple of posts, a couple of stories around the fact that they've launched, and then there's not really any talk of it again. And people need to psychologically see something 12 to 14 times before they actually buy it. And so subconsciously, they need that repetition. And so if you only talk about your product and your launch on the first day and then you never really talk about it again, that's such a missed opportunity. So launch over 2 weeks. And the way we do that with our clients is really our launch method formula, where we build our audience over the 6 months that you're gonna be working on the behind the scenes, so that we have a big enough audience to sell to. And then we launch over 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, your customers are gonna be able to go onto your Shopify site and make those pre-sale orders, and make it crystal clear that it's only during those 2 weeks that they can buy and they can check out. Because if you can always do pre-sales, it's gonna make it so hard for you to fulfill. And also from a customer psychology perspective, if they know they can just buy it whenever, they're probably gonna put it off, and then they're never gonna get to it. So make sure the cart open is only for 2 weeks, and you make it crystal clear so people understand that. And then after the 2 weeks, you're gonna do a wait list for your pre-sales. And then in the back end, you're gonna be in fulfillment mode, because you're gonna collect all the orders that obviously I know you're gonna get. And then if it's 50 orders, if it's 100, you can then take that to your manufacturer and make it. And so you're not always going to them with one-off orders, and that's just a nightmare to really try to execute. So this is great for a fulfillment perspective as well. And then once you've fulfilled and you want to open your cart again, you can totally do that. But in the meantime, you just want to make sure that you build up your audience again, because we always want to make sure that we're growing our audience, we're nurturing them, and so that we're not exhausting our audience. And then you can basically launch again over a 2 week interval. So make sure you launch over 2 weeks, really maximize that, and it will really help you from an execution perspective with the pre-sales model as well. Friendly reminder to register for my free launch masterclass if you haven't already, because I'm giving away a ton of secret strategies. And so if you got a lot out of this video, you're gonna love that masterclass. You can save your spot at recloseted.com/masterclass, and make sure you do so ASAP before we're full. Amazing job. Feel free to comment any questions you have down below, and I will personally get back to you. Together, let's transform the harmful fashion industry.